Welcome to the Deep Dive, where we take a stack of information and, well, extract the most important nuggets of knowledge for you. Today we're plunging into a truly foundational topic, the institution of marriage and family. It's something that touches nearly every life, right? But how often do we actually go back to its proposed origins and really dig into its deeper purposes?
That's a great point. And for this deep dive, we're looking at a single, pretty comprehensive source today. It's titled God's Gift of a Good Godly Family.
Yeah.
And it draws heavily from core biblical passages, Genesis, Proverbs, Matthew, Ephesians, plus insights from Pastor Dr. W.F. Kumuyi, who's a well-known voice in contemporary Pentecostal circles.
Okay, so our mission here is to unpack this specific biblical perspective on marriage and family. We're going to explore it from, its divine institution, its purposes, all the way through to the practical preparations and the ongoing journey it talks about. And what you might find really insightful, I think, are the particular details and the sort of interconnected framework this view lays out. Okay, let's get into it. So to really get a handle on this perspective, our source tells us we need to go right back to the beginning. It takes us into the book of Genesis, the creation narrative itself.
Precisely, yeah. The core statement that really anchors this whole discussion comes from Genesis 2:18. And the Lord God said, "It is not good that the man should be alone. I will make him an helpmeet for him." And this isn't just, a casual remark. It highlights this fundamental idea that companionship wasn't an afterthought. It was actually part of the original divine design for humanity.
And what's really unique, I found, quite striking actually, is the specific detail the source zooms in on about how that companion was created. It's not just a general poof, you're someone.
No, it isn't. The text, Genesis 2:21-24, it explicitly says God took one of his ribs. Now here's where the source offers a really insightful interpretation. It explains that God, he did not take a bone from man's feet, showing that the man shouldn't trample on his wife. God did not take a bone from the man's head, showing that the man should not use his mental prowess to overrule the woman, but God took a rib from the man's side, showing the love and affection that should be between a man and his wife.
Okay.
So, for anyone who might have mostly heard maybe more traditional or hierarchical views on gender roles, this rib story, as the source explains it, it gives a surprisingly different, almost counterintuitive understanding. It emphasizes equality and affection, rooting it right in the creation act itself, like a partnership by design.
Right. So if that's the origin story, what does this specific viewpoint imply about the structure of marriage itself and its permanence, and how universal is it considered to be from this perspective?
Well, it means that from that very first union, men were told to leave their father and their mother and shall cleave unto his wife, and they shall be one flesh. The source really emphasizes that at this foundation point, there were no tribes or religious affiliations and views. So the institution of marriage is God's plan for all humanity. It suggests a universal design, basically.
Right. Transcending culture.
Exactly. Transcending cultural or historical lines. And this idea is later picked up and reemphasized by Jesus himself in Matthew 19, verses 4-6, where he says, "What therefore God hath joined together, let not man put asunder." So it's presented as this unbreakable, divinely ordained bond for everyone.
So for you listening, think about that. What is this origin story with its specific rib interpretation and this claim of universal design? What does that imply about the inherent nature of marriage? It's a perspective suggesting a really deep, preordained purpose. So that's a very high bar, doesn't it, for definition and permanence? Okay, so building on that origin, the source moves from what marriage is to why it exists. He gets into what it calls his preeminent purpose for a good, helpful family. And it doesn't just list a couple of things. It outlines 7 specific, interconnected reasons, suggesting it's not just, a social thing, but a multifaceted, purposeful partnership designed for practical and spiritual roles.
Indeed. These purposes really illuminate the comprehensive scope of marriage from this viewpoint. It paints a truly holistic picture of its divine intention and, how it's meant to actually work day to day.
Let's dive into these then. First one, purposeful partnership.
Right. This comes straight from Genesis 2:18, like we just talked about. The idea that it is not good that the man should be alone. So this leads directly to marriage being a partnership in purpose. It's about forming a united front, where both people contribute to a shared life, a shared calling, not just operating alone, combining strengths, basically, to achieve more together.
Makes sense. Next, the source talks about perpetual purity.
This is referencing 1 Corinthians 7, verses 2 and 9. This purpose directly tackles avoiding fornication, which in biblical terms means any sexual activity outside of marriage. The source quotes it directly. Nevertheless, to avoid fornication, let every man have his own wife, and let every woman have her own husband. But if they cannot contain, let them marry, for it is better to marry than to burn. So it's a very direct statement on marriage's role in providing, let's say, a proper context for sexual intimacy, and through that, maintaining purity and preventing moral compromise.
Okay. Then we have prevailing power.
Yeah.
That sounds particularly interesting when you think about a relationship. What kind of power are we talking about here?
It is interesting. This comes from Ecclesiastes 4, verses 9 to 12. The source highlights, two are better than one because they have a good reward for their labor. For if they fall, the one will lift up his fellow. So it talks about mutual warmth, strength against problems. If one prevail against him, two shall withstand him. And significantly, it emphasizes the power of agreement in prayer. It quotes Matthew 18:19.
The agreement verse.
Exactly. If two of you shall agree on earth as touching anything that they shall ask, it shall be done for them of my Father which is in heaven. And that phrase, a threefold cord is not quickly broken. It's a powerful image, right? Spiritual and practical strength in unity. So it's about combined effort, resilience, and amplified spiritual authority through agreement.
That connects nicely into the next one. Pertinent protection. How does marriage provide that according to the source?
Well, this references 1 Peter 3:7. Here, the husband is encouraged to dwell with them according to knowledge, giving honor unto the wife as unto the weaker vessel, and as being heirs together of the grace of life, that your prayers be not hindered. Now, the source interprets weaker vessel not as inferiority, but as needing specific care. It says, a protected vessel cannot be easily broken.
Okay.
So a woman with a godly husband will be protected. This highlights a sort of reciprocal responsibility for care, for safeguarding. The husband's role is seen as providing a covering, a protection for his wife within the marriage. And importantly, ensuring their shared spiritual life, especially prayer, isn't hindered by conflict or dishonor.
Right. Next, a very traditional purpose, but one the source really emphasizes.
Yeah.
Precious procreation.
Genesis 1:27 and 28. This refers back to the original command, be fruitful and multiply and replenish the earth. But what's fascinating here is the specific, almost strategic spiritual angle the source brings up. It states, if the church is slow and sluggish with procreation, the rest of the world will outnumber the church of God.
Wow. Okay. That's quite direct.
It is. The insight there is how deeply this perspective connects family planning, not just to personal choice, but to the active propagation and influence of the faith community itself, making it almost a matter of spiritual growth and, perpetuating beliefs across generations.
Moving on to parental provision.
Yeah, Proverbs 22:6. Marriage is seen as instituted for the training, provision, and upkeep of the children. The source really stresses the crucial need for spouses to cooperate in training our children in the way they should go. So it's about a united effort in raising, guiding, providing for the next generation, instilling specific values.
Okay. And finally, participatory pilgrimage. Sounds like a lifelong journey together.
It does. This draws on Hebrews 11, the faith chapter. It talks about marriage as a source of encouragement on the pilgrimage's life, the spiritual journey. It gives examples like Noah, Abraham, Moses, highlighting how their families participated together in fulfilling God's plan. The faith journey, the source argues, is seen as a shared one. Spouses provide mutual support. Walking alone, it says, could be frustrating.
It's really compelling how these aren't just, separate ideas. They form this cohesive, comprehensive framework. This perspective suggests such a profound, interconnected purpose for marriage, way beyond just a legal or social contract. It's presented as this deeply interwoven part of one's entire spiritual journey and purpose. So, if marriage has these deep purposes in this divine origin, what does this perspective suggest for people actually considering it? The source moves into personal preparation for a godly, happy family. And it notes, as we plan to build our homes, we must consider what type of home we want to have and make the necessary preparations.
Exactly. And the text outlines 3 critical areas of preparation. These are presented as absolutely essential before entering marriage from this viewpoint.
First, and it sounds pretty non-negotiable, is proper relationship with the Lord.
Yes. Referencing 2 Corinthians 6.14-18, this is called the basic preparation, and it's a strong instruction. Be you not unequally yoked together with unbelievers. For listeners maybe less familiar, that phrase, unequally yoked, it comes from farming, actually.
Right, like 2 different animals trying to pull the same plow.
Exactly. Yeah. Leads to a mess. Right. Unproductive, painful. So in this context, it means not forming that permanent, intimate bond of marriage with someone who doesn't share your fundamental spiritual alignment, your commitment to Christ. The idea is first you need that personal relationship with the Lord yourself, evidenced by being a new creature in Christ, meaning a spiritual transformation. Then you seek a partner who shares that same foundational spiritual identity. It's about ensuring a shared spiritual direction.
Okay, shared foundation. Second point, prayerful requests from the Lord. So it's not just about finding someone suitable, but actively seeking God's guidance.
Very much so. Proverbs 19.14, Matthew 7.7 to 11. The source states flat out, "A prudent wife is from the Lord." It strongly encourages seeking a good spouse through prayer. It even quotes Jeremiah 29 about God's thoughts of peace and an expected end, and Matthew 7 reinforces it. Ask, and it shall be given you. The core message is, don't leave God out of your marital plans. There's a belief that God gives good things, including, from this perspective, a good spouse. Divine guidance is key.
And third, protective righteousness before the Lord. This implies a very proactive stance, doesn't it, like building defenses?
It absolutely does. Isaiah 54.17, 1 Corinthians 10.31. This preparation emphasizes that righteousness is our protection. The source boldly declares, "No weapon that is formed against thee shall prosper." Now, in this context, righteousness means living aligned with God's moral standards, integrity, purity, justice. It calls for this righteousness to permeate all the aspects of our marriages, from proposal to courtship to the wedding ceremony and reception, urging believers to do all to the glory of God and abstain from all appearance of evil. It's not just avoiding bad things, it's actively cultivating this moral integrity which, the source believes, acts like a spiritual shield, protecting the marriage from challenges both external and internal.
Yeah, these aren't just light suggestions, are they? They're presented as critical, foundational choices for anyone aiming for this specific vision of a godly, happy family. What really stands out is how intensely spiritual and deliberate the whole preparation process is framed. It's far beyond just romance or social planning. Okay, so once married, this deep dive shows the journey isn't over. It's really just beginning. The source talks about progressive partnership in a growing, healthy family, stating, after we get married, we must progress in all aspects of our lives. So it's not static, it's dynamic, evolving.
Exactly. This section details how that partnership is meant to evolve, to deepen continuously. It emphasizes ongoing growth, not arriving at some fixed state, intentional development throughout.
The first aspect here is righteous fellowship in a gracious home. This sounds like it's about the atmosphere, the spirit of the marriage and family.
Ephesians 5, Philippians 2. The source asserts our homes must be gracious, and everyone who associates with our family should be able to see the grace of God in our lives. It lays out specific roles, quoting Ephesians. Wives, submit yourselves unto your own husbands as unto the Lord, and husbands, love your wives, even as Christ also loved the church and gave himself for it. Now, for those less familiar with Ephesians, that phrase, submit as unto the Lord, is often interpreted as doing so out of reverence for Christ, part of one's spiritual life, not just human subservience.
Right, there's theological weight there.
There is. And the source also strongly advises against secrecy, pride, or vainglory. That's like excessive, boastful pride. Instead, it advocates for each partner to esteem other better than themselves. So the emphasis is on transparent, selfless love, mutual respect, and a home environment that visibly reflects spiritual values. Grace.
Okay. And then refreshing fulfillment of growing helpfulness. This seems to loop back to that initial purpose of companionship, but adds an evolving element.
Yes, exactly. Genesis 2.18, again, 2 Samuel 10.1m. It reiterates marriage began for helpfulness, the man needing a helpmeet. But the source makes a really profound point here. Loneliness and solitude are problems for man, so even if procreation is not the focus of a marriage due to age or other reasons, marriage is still useful for reciprocal helpfulness. And here's what's truly fascinating. The idea that there are times God withholds an idea from you until you seek help from your spouse because he wants to fulfill the helpfulness through your spouse.
Wow, that's a powerful concept.
Isn't it? It elevates the spouse's role to almost a divine channel for insight and support. Suggesting a partner isn't just an assistant, but maybe a necessary co-creator in figuring out God's plans. Like, you might be stuck on something, and only by talking it through with your spouse, seeking their input, does the answer emerge, as if God designed that specific synergy.
That really reframes mutual support, doesn't it? Beyond just emotional backup. Okay, and the final aspect for this journey, rapturable faithfulness for a glorious heaven.
Right. 1 Corinthians 15, Revelation 19. This lifts marriage beyond just earthly life, suggesting it should actually prepare us for the rapture. For those unfamiliar, the rapture in this theology is the belief that faithful Christians will be suddenly taken from earth to meet Christ. So the source says spouses should encourage each other to remain faithful to God and continue to the end. It talks about the ultimate marriage of the Lamb, that symbolic union of Christ and his church in eternity. So it directly connects earthly marriage to an eternal destiny, the culmination of faith, like a training ground for everlasting commitment.
That really underlines the continuous, deeply spiritual nature of that participatory pilgrimage we talked about earlier.
Mhm.
It suggests marriage, from this perspective, isn't just a journey through life, but maybe direct preparation for something far beyond it. So we've taken quite a deep dive into a very specific, biblically rooted perspective on marriage and family. We've traced it from its divine origin, explored those profound sevenfold purposes, examined the pretty rigorous personal preparations it outlines, and finally looked at the progressive journey of partnership it describes.
Yeah, this deep dive really presents a holistic, deeply theological framework. It views marriage not just as, a social construct, but as a journey with genuinely eternal implications. And it demands real intentionality in every single stage, from thinking about a partner to its ongoing growth and its ultimate spiritual destination.
This perspective lays out a truly unique and comprehensive blueprint. If, as the source says, a prudent wife is from the Lord, and marriage is ultimately meant to prepare us for rapturable faithfulness for a glorious heaven, what does this viewpoint suggest about how we approach commitment, shared purpose, and spiritual growth within partnerships today? Even regardless of our own personal beliefs, it's definitely a thought worth mulling over.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive.
We hope this deep dive has given you some maybe surprising facts and some new insights to consider, perhaps prompting you to look at this foundational institution in a new light. Until next time, keep digging and keep learning.